Thank you for joining our webinar, Powering Your Anti-Piracy Strategy with Business Intelligence and Analytics. My name is Julia Marber, Production Manager for MarkMonitor, and I'm excited to be joined by my colleagues, Robin Boldon, Director, Anti-Piracy Product Manager at MarkMonitor, and Zach Wolf, Product Marketing Manager at MarkMonitor. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Robin and Zach to our presentation.
Thank you very much, and I know that both Robin and I are very excited to be here. Before we jump into all of the exciting content that we have, I think some background and introductions are in order. So Robin, do you mind kicking off the introductions, and I'll follow you up?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. My name is Robin Boldon, and as the introduction there, I look after product management here at MarkMonitor for our anti-piracy business, and that spans the full spectrum of the products that we have that include all the on-demand scanning and monitoring services, as long as our live event protection business and the business analysis and analytics part.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. And again, I'm Zach Wolf. I am the product marketing manager for anti-piracy here at MarkMonitor. I've been in the intellectual property protection business for about 6.5 years now, and then focusing and specializing in anti-piracy and helping kind of build the products, or work with Robin to help build the products that help service our customers. So very excited. So without further ado, we will get into all of the content. So I think it's always good, to use a quote to start things off. A lot of times someone else's, good thoughts and words can help put into context, really the information that we're trying to get across, and kind of set up the, the path that we're about to take for the next 45 minutes or so. So here's a quote from Nick Smith, a product manager at Microsoft, who really, I think captures, why business intelligence and analytics is important, especially as we'll show you in the anti-piracy space. So, BI is about providing the right data at the right time to the right people so they can make the right decisions. And so everything, that we'll discuss, and, most certainly, you're probably aware from your own experiences within your own business groups is, not only is having access to the data, crucial to make those key decisions, that help you win in the market and help you, of course, protect your content, but having access to that data and getting that data at the right time, when it's most relevant is really important. And so we'll walk through, a number of different things that kind of highlight, just how important those things are, and how we go about, implementing them. So by way of an agenda, you'll see a few different things. It's kind of a nice roadmap to let you know where we're headed during this webinar. The first bullet that you see there is some latest piracy trends discussion. So one of the things that we're always, kind of keeping our eye on is, what's happening in the piracy space. Is the latest happenings, especially in piracy that moves at such a fast speed. How are those industry trends affecting, the product, and specifically for this webinar, how do the latest trends impact again, the BI and analytics that you can put into your program. Then we're going to move into leveraging, data. Really what we want to highlight there is, how the anti-piracy group here at MarkMonitor uses technology to fight piracy. So what we'll do is we'll be highlighting a few technologies that we use specifically, to fight piracy and feed, the data and analytics to help make those business decisions. Some impact. So if we're going to kind of be, knowledgeable and thoughtful and walk through, how we tackle this approach, I think it's helpful to follow that up, with some real-life examples of how our data, BI and analytics, have helped companies make, more informed, better, timely decisions about their own internal business. So we're going to walk through a few examples of that, and kind of outline how we assisted. We've got some case studies, so a little bit different. We have a few products that we'll get into that help us look at kind of the global industry trends of piracy and how you can use that data to make your own, again, informed decisions. So we'll look through some specific use cases for customers, and we'll look through some specific use cases of how we've applied overall piracy trends to business decisions, and then a look to the future. So we've got, a snapshot of discussion of some upcoming technology, that we're pursuing and thinking about that we think is quite exciting. And then certainly at the end, some key takeaways, 3 things you can take with you, based on all of this information that should really help your business. So the first trend that we want to discuss, and this one is really interesting. To me, you see the quote there on the right from Saul Goodman. If you are familiar with the television show, either Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, the quote from his character will certainly resonate with the type of trend that we're seeing. There's no honor among thieves except for us, of course. And when we talk about the thieves in this case, we're talking about people that unfortunately engage in digital piracy. So one of the things that we're seeing is that pirates are pirating the look, feel, theme, brand reputation of other pirating sites. So there are, unfortunately, a number of pirating sites that have kind of risen to prominence, and they're the first stop on the way when someone's trying to find that unfortunately unauthorized content. And other, pirates that are trying to gain, popularity for a number of different reasons have decided just to wholesale copy them. And so we see, unrelated sites that look, feel, and appear that they're related to the most popular one. They've got some technology kind of tricks, if you will, of using subdomains and others to redirect, and just flat out steal the traffic. And then this one I think is especially eyebrow raising, is that they are, beginning to file search delisting notices on each other in hopes to remove them from, popular search index rankings and hopefully get their site promoted. So as we see this, these copies, really what we try to do is see, make sure that our coverage is, complete and that we're there, so then we can, turn that into actionable data.
I think, also what this slide demonstrates is that pirates very quickly recognize the power of the search index, the social media presence, and they're using the same marketing techniques that legitimate content owners and platforms are using to engage directly with fans or their audiences. And I think, the phenomenon that's driven that in a significant way has been the proliferation of subscription-based services. And so we'll just go on to the next slide there. Sure. This is a really good example of very slick services that are offering a live linear TV experience as well as a fully stocked video-on-demand library that you pay for. These services are entirely unauthorized. They're typically delivered either via generic set-top boxes powered by Android or Linux or some other easily available device, or a software application or a mobile application that consumes the TV streams, the IPTV streams. And the prices that are charged are, in many cases, far lower than you'd pay a legitimate platform for a much smaller selection. And in this example here, this is actually this $23.99 is actually for a quarter for 3 months. So that's what, just under $8 a month. Mm-hmm. And that gives you 1,500 TV channels, HD, SD, and then quite euphemistically at the bottom there, you've got Sports Live, International Live IPTV, and that's only referring to one thing, and that's premium sports television.
And one thing that I think is interesting about this model as well, and Robin, maybe you can provide some more details because I found it interesting when you were explaining it to me, is how they've kind of, since they are pirates, how they've borrowed other business models, where they have, if you want to become an affiliate and you want to, kind of join up with me and resell, these particular instances, then that, we can form kind of an affiliate partnership, and then that proliferates, across the internet.
Absolutely. These services have established very effective affiliate marketing networks, franchising business models. Yeah. The very simple one is the reseller. So you would buy a number of bundles of tokens. Each token relates to a subscription. You then sell on those subscriptions, and the difference is your margin. Mm-hmm. And you are rewarded for your loyalty by buying. The more you buy or the more you sell, the more perks that you are offered, to the point where you may get to platinum tier, where they offer you your own branded portal, like the one you see on the screen, and perhaps more preferential rates for buying your subscriptions. It also allows them to really distribute the liability. So it isn't one single operator, and if he gets shut down or legal action is taken against him, the entire network goes down. He's able to distribute his content and the subscription. So it actually mimics very much the sort of gang model we see with drugs and other illegal activity.
Sure. Yeah, between the copying, the search, delisting, and then these fully functional sites, they're becoming much more kind of sophisticated in their operations to mimic, legitimate looking, business tactics and legitimate looking sites, right? So kind of gone are the days of old of, or not completely gone, but they're, much more polished than you would normally see, which unfortunately can trick a consumer, potentially into falling into this trap.
Absolutely. I think what's really interesting as well is that, people are switching from legitimate platforms that have verified, qualified viewing metrics. So, the Nielsen system in the US, Barb in the UK, other jurisdictions have their own audience measurement services. This entire access model, there are no viewing statistics. So in terms of insight, in terms of viewing behavior, this trend is really interesting to see the scale of the operation, to see the type of data centers that they are located in, and therefore the revenue that's coming in to afford those sorts of data centers, suggests a significant volume. There's a number of industry reports that have been prepared over the last 12 months that really go into a bit more detail, even looking at ISP data to see how this traffic builds up and what the most popular channels are or consumption access methods, particularly the likes of Kodi and these IPTV boxes, as we talked about.
Then a third one, and I think this, mimics some of the previous discussion of the first two slides, and the becoming the more legitimate. And this one, they offer full support. So if you have a problem, with your subscription service, or if you happen to be, part of that affiliate network, if something isn't working right, even though these are totally, unauthorized and illegitimate streams, you can still call. You can call customer service. You can jump on Skype, and they'll guide you to a better customer experience, even though you're obviously operating outside of the bounds of a legitimate company that you might think would traditionally offer customer service. So kind of an eyebrow-raising one, if nothing else, that they've gone to the point where they'll offer you some customer service to help you find whatever it is you might be looking for once you pay for one of those subscriptions.
Yeah, I think this example is an interesting one that this is the underlying host in this sense who are providing the content delivery network to the IPTV provider. So it's a multi-layer set of customer service in the same way the consumer can pick up the phone to their telco, to their TV provider, and discuss their subscription or some technical faults. There's a second line support, which the pirate's own service providers, and it's a very well established sort of business model. In fact, there's the other item here that I draw people's attention to is this particular host boasts about the fact it ignores all removal notices and is anonymous and doesn't have any geo-blocking restrictions.
Then finishing up here in the latest trends, of course, with the shift to the IPTV that we just mentioned, people are familiar with Kodi, which is a totally legitimate application or piece of software, but people are unfortunately using those things to use the add-ons to provide access to the illegitimate content, and the barrier, the technical barrier of entry, I think, is getting much lower for people to be able to access piracy.
Yeah.
So before, you used to have some sort, maybe not a significant amount, but some sort of technical expertise if you wanted to find pirated content through some traditional P2P avenues or some others. But now we have everyone's friends, families, neighbors are familiar, or it's much more common, discussion and lexicon to use some of these new services and to be able to get them up and running with little to no technical expertise, and then you're accessing that content. So the face of piracy has changed to basically everyone can kind of access these things, and it's becoming much more common.
And one thing that we look at is when we track IPTV services, we also look to see how many how-to videos we can find on YouTube.
Yeah, sure.
And then we look at the viewing figures of those videos. Now, you can't put a direct correlation between viewing figures on a how-to video on YouTube and actually how many people are using that service, but it's certainly an indication of footfall, of intent on how many people went to discover to find out how that particular service functions, and also how recent any comments are on that video post.
Sure.
Is it still active? What are the sorts of questions that are being asked about that service? Again, these are all intel points that we can use to build up that picture of how the pirates operate. And also, we'll talk about this a bit later in terms of how we can build these data points into a consumption pattern that lets you determine, maybe you should launch a new product in a certain market, maybe you don't have a key licensing partner, a number of different things.
Sure. And so with that, discussion of those latest trends, and as Robin just mentioned on that last slide, being able to, from both an operational standpoint, but most certainly from a technical standpoint, be able to keep up with those trends and the general well-worn territory of piracy, be able to have to be able to go in, disrupt, have an impact on that ecosystem, and then take that data and give it to turn it into some actionable intelligence, not only from content protection, but from business decisions. And so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is shift gears just a little bit into leveraging data, and we're going to walk through a couple different pieces of technology that we use to help when we're when we're fighting piracy, to then gather up that data and make it into something actionable.
So this slide really takes you through the approach that we take to monitoring the piracy landscape. We have developed scanning and detection technologies that align to all the major methods of content distribution currently in use online. In the same way that big rights holders, legitimate platforms are looking to find new ways to engage with their audience, new ways to deliver their content, pirates are not very far behind, or in some cases ahead of them. So we try to ensure that we have visibility in all of the different areas of piracy. So I'm going to start very quickly on this slide here, and I'm just going to pause for a moment, just talk a little bit about peer-to-peer. So we have one of the most established peer-to-peer monitoring solutions in the industry, and what we've found is certainly over time a shift for casual consumption of video from predominantly peer-to-peer to more live streaming. However, we do still see a significant volume of pirated content distributed and traded on peer-to-peer networks, particularly the BitTorrent network. And there are a couple of others, but by far and away that's responsible for the largest aspect of the piracy we see in the peer-to-peer space. I mean, just to give you an example, we typically scan for about 1 to 2 billion pieces of information, and that allows us to build a very complex picture of what behavior is being happening, what content is being traded and downloaded.
And that was billion with a B, right?
Billion with a B, because it's still responsible for a huge volume of traffic, and that's just in the media entertainment space. So of course we also track other industries as well on the peer-to-peer network, such as software, games, music, publishing, books and things like that. So anything that's a digital object can be effectively traded or distributed via peer-to-peer.
Correct. Yeah.
So actually, if you added that into the mix as well, that number grows significantly. Then of course we are web, which is a well-established mechanism. Everyone has a browser on their device of choice, and it's the sort of common way of accessing infringing or unauthorized content. We also include in that category mobile apps as well, so there are some well-known applications that are used to access certain types of content. Search engines are a really good proxy that add an additional intel point for us in terms of if Google and Bing or Baidu, Yandex and so on have indexed various bits of content, and we find that content. Not only do we use that to go and find further pieces of content, but of course the extensive delisting and page cleaning service that we offer also. We take the information we gather through that process to add further fidelity to the data that we have to our BI services. User-generated content sites and social media sites. Social in particular, huge spike in growth for streaming. Most of the social media and UGC sites now have very slick tools for uploading video and consuming video. They've democratized the ability to distribute as a private citizen, made it very, very easy. So there is virtually no friction at all in order to upload everything from your favorite cat videos to the latest blockbuster movie or live sporting event. So we see an awful lot of content on those platforms. And then, as we just touched on a minute ago, Kodi, again, it's something that has grown exponentially. It's very easy to create an add-on as long as you understand the Python programming language. There's no moderation that you would expect on, say, an app store, where it has to go through an approval process. Anyone can write one of these add-ons.
Yeah, no restrictions.
No restrictions, and host that add-on wherever you wish. And it's very easy to add that piece of code to your Kodi media player. They've also done a lot of work, the Kodi Foundation, to build media players on lots of different platforms. So they're available on mobile devices, set-top boxes,
video game systems,
of course, which is where it originated from. And then final category, I think, which is one of the newer categories, is certainly around IPTV and closed networks services. So, pirates not putting up content for free, but charging a subscription fee, and actually using, the IPTV technology is a well-established broadcast technology for delivering video over the internet. And again, the barrier to entry to access that technology has come down. There are lots of open source, TV station in a box type solutions that make it very easy for somebody to set up a service and take payments and provide subscriptions and so on.
And this timeline is interesting as well. So we have all these different channels that we cover. And if you look at it, if you've been kind of around or paying attention to piracy, it almost is a timeline of the quote unquote one of the original ways mass people would access piracy, all the way through to IPTV. So as the piracy landscape has changed and adapted, the channels that we have covered with our our technology has also changed and adapted.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean, we've made a significant sort of investment over the last few years, particularly on distributed computing, proxying, so that we can scan in regional locations. But also, we work with a number of partners on technologies like video fingerprinting, forensic watermarks. We can trace content back to source. Lots of technology that is used together in conjunction with our expertise, our human expertise, to deliver solutions.
So one of the first pieces of technology that we wanted to highlight is the MarkMonitor Global Digital Piracy Index, or the GDPI. So one of Robin mentioned this at the beginning, is that with all of the billions of data points that we collect, we have a kind of a treasure trove of information and data that we can turn into actionable insights based on piracy information, which I think is it's an interesting thing to look at the piracy information and use that to help make your legitimate business decisions on kind of the landscape as a whole.
When you're collecting information on piracy activity for hundreds of thousands of titles across lots of different industries. You have quite a unique perspective in terms of the trends that we observe, whether there are crossovers between industry, and that's a really interesting thing. But also when you see new types of piracy appear, and how we can then track how that correlates into the existing data set.
Yeah, and then we'll get into it here in just a couple slides. But we've been able to use our GDPI data in a number of interesting ways that have helped anything from release dates and windows to marketing and promotional campaigns to expanding into different regions that were previously uncovered based on this data and finding out that there's audiences out there waiting to be discovered in some instances based on this piracy data.
Yeah, I mean, and also we have a significant historical data set as well. So we go back to that 2011. And that builds a really interesting model around past observations, and how they relate to present day and potentially future piracy or future opportunities. And that's an interesting kind of that whole area around, does that inform the commissioning process and new content?
Could, yeah, very much so. And the secondary piece, and this one I think is probably the most straightforward as far as turning data into something actionable. And this is a piece of technology we use called Insight. So again, with all of the data pieces, and then all of the actions that we take as far as the kind of the discovery, the harvesting, the review and verification, and then in some instances the enforcement, of that infringing content. All of that is gathered, and all of that is synthesized down into this dashboard. So I can, so you can see, as you mentioned, kind of the historical trends. You can see a snapshot of, current actions, and then you can use that insight to then look, kind of into the future. So if you are managing, an anti-piracy program for your particular business, you probably have a number of KPIs, that you've set as measurables for success within your particular program. So having this proprietary dashboard that makes it really easy to get in and look and say, yep. Oh, we see this coming in the future. Let's shift, our resourcing, because no one has, infinite resourcing. It's just a really powerful tool for you to be able to create the insights and go back to business units, share that information with folks that maybe not as knowledgeable about the piracy space, but they're still interested in how it can impact the business. There's a ton of different ways that I think Insight really helps to take all of those data points and synthesize them into something that's reasonable.
Yeah, every good anti-piracy company should have a compelling data visualization tool, a reporting function, and we're particularly proud of ours. It's very extensible. It allows us to deliver customized reporting. We have clients that have an API integration, because actually they will take that data set and blend it perhaps with some internal enterprise data of their own. So, right through to clients who they like a narrative, they like a prepared report that takes advantage of our analytical expertise to provide them some insight to help them.
And then the next one that we're going to take a look at is a new tool that we have developed called Uplink. So as we talk about the piracy landscape, especially within the different channels and especially the emerging trends, there is coverage of the piracy landscape is as important, as anything that you could kind of take a look at. So as folks come across this content, especially those that are rights holders or are interested in kind of protecting that, Uplink allows them to simply submit when they find something. It goes directly to us, and then we can action it. The other thing that is interesting is we can use data and tables and trends to take that submitted information, and then we can draw kind of conclusions or inferences from that. Whether maybe there's a new site that hasn't been on people's radar, and then during a certain event, wow, we got this this one site submitted 1,000 times, whatever it might be,
so
and you can draw coverage from that.
You can. I mean, so this was recently used in anger at a pretty well-known global event over the summer, and we were actually sort of blown away by the intelligence that we were able to obtain from that, and some real detailed insight into regional piracy or even down to metropolitan area piracy, and content being submitted to us for investigation and analysis. And yeah, I mean, we expect to see more use of this tool as it's developed.
And then finally, as we talk about technology, we move, towards forms of automation that allow us to go through all of the the submissions that that we get, be able to quickly verify those, and then be able to do something actionable with them. And so,
yeah, I think as I talked about earlier, we have a hybrid model at MarkMonitor in that we have some good technology, but we also have our team of experts who can deal with the more complex cases or be on hand to further review and refine and verify those infringements. So this is a really interesting development for us to complement that human expertise with, I describe it as a turbocharger.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
yeah, that's a good description.
It doesn't replace that expertise, but what it does is it really gives a very high quality automated approach to verifying links and content, whether they are infringing or not. And so we developed this machine learning tool that has a number of models contained within it that are tailored for specific types of content, maybe specific events, specific targets, and it then provides that predicting service.
So, really just a quick summary here to kind of wrap the technology section. Certainly the pirates are taking advantage of every single digital channel that they can. They are in lockstep, or and sometimes they move ahead of the legitimate industry. And so your technology really has to cover all of the different options. Otherwise, you're going to miss things that are crucially important to be able to have insight and impact.
Yeah, I mean, we chose a couple of items here that I think resonate with those folks interested in business intelligence and
yeah, exactly.
I mean, this touches the surface in terms of some of the technology that we use on a daily basis, or we are deploying in the future. So, obviously, I guess that's the end of my pitch as a product guy. But if anyone has any further questions, on some other technologies, we'd love to talk, further about that later.
Yeah, sure. And then, with the dashboards, the reporting, and then, some of those automation tools, really, being able to, the decisions you can make are only good as the data that you can get through, the data that you can review, and then being able to see and digest it in a coherent and easy manner.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. This morning we had a meeting about delisting, so submitting to research indexes links that need to be removed if they're pointing to pirate content. And it's interesting looking at the approach that we take around the quality control, the QC steps to ensure that what is submitted to the search engines is accurate and valid and correct, versus some of those other approaches we see in the industry of gather together as much as you can and throw it at the wall and see what sticks.
Right. Yeah.
And that's it doesn't really have the desired effect.
Now that we've covered the trends in the technology, what we want to do is highlight some instances where those have come together to make some impact and resulted in some actionable decisions. So we'll move through a couple of examples of that. And as Robin mentioned, certainly this is all geared towards business intelligence and in analytics, not necessarily the full scope of everything that we offer. So the first one that we took a look at is, so there's a rise in all of these new distribution platforms. So you've got the traditional ones that everyone thinks of. You have technology platforms that are now becoming, buying rights, and they're becoming, just as well known as, any normal channel or place that you would think to go, and watch content. And so, how can we, how do we take some of that data and lead to some interesting insights? So some of the questions that we were asked, how is our current distribution and availability strategy working? Do people have, the access? Are we distributing our content in the places, where we need to be? If any conclusions can be made from the piracy data about how that's currently, handled and the availability, and then really, what blind spots as far as marketing and promotion, as far as global content. So we're trying to figure out if we're in the right spaces, if we're doing the right distribution, if we're on the right platforms and channels, so on and so forth. That all needs to be backed up with marketing promotion, all of the other internal business needs that maybe not directly align with, the traditional thought of an anti-piracy program. So what we found, so we took a look, we used the GDPI global data, and for this particular customer, they found out that they had some really important titles that were being heavily pirated in regions with delayed access. So everybody knows that if you have a hit show, everybody wants to talk about it, they want to discuss with their friends, they want to jump online and say, oh, did you see what happened to this latest character, and so on and so forth. And they had a couple of those in some regions where the availability was delayed and there was a massive spike in piracy. So to follow that up, the additional promotional activities were weak in those same regions, unsurprisingly. And then finally, one thing that was interesting is internally when they went and took a look at, again, the access part of the availability, the pricing in certain regions was such that it excluded a lot of their potential customers. And so it's looking at the inside of those marketing and promotional activities, making sure that, globally you are economically inviting to all of those, all of your potential customers, and that was kind of a miss that they had as far as, why aren't people, now that we've got these authorized channels, why aren't people aiming at them? And so here is, kind of the impact of this particular business, case that we put together. So it changed a bit of the mindset. People kind of build in their mind that, a pirate is this, quote unquote, bad guy, ill-intentioned, purposely, seeking to do the wrong thing and steal the content. But in this case, there was a lot of it were legitimate, consumers who really wanted, to just view the content, and then unfortunately it wasn't accessible in a timely manner, and so they decided to divert to other means. The increased, promotional and marketing efforts in certain regions was increased. That seemed to really help drive and steer folks into those authorized channels that they previously thought were unavailable. And then finally, they took a look and revisited their release date windows to make sure that they better aligned globally, so the folks in these particular regions didn't feel like they were being left out or left behind the characters and the story arcs of shows that they really love.
And we see that happen quite a lot now, where day and date releasing schedules are coordinated now between regions and affiliates. Marketing campaigns are synchronized. This data also can point to you at which languages to localize first. So if you've got filmed entertainment or a TV show, whatever it might be, and you need to determine which market you're localizing, well, you may look at where your content is being pirated as an indicator as what was actually pirated. Well, actually, we see certain regions, and Russia is an example, where fans, if you want to call them that, will localize their own content. And I don't just mean doing subtitles. They'll do full multi-voice dubbing with Foley and extra sound effects, to make that more accessible in that market. And one of the things that we will do is when we observe that piracy, we're often engaged to, we create metadata and tags around the evidence to highlight where we've determined what language it was. Is it a fan version? In fact, was it ripped off a Blu-ray? Was it taken for cinema? What was the original vector for getting that content into the market?
Yep. And then we'll move through a couple of these here. Excuse me. So again, here's the second case. There's more content available now than ever before. You have all of these different groups that are just purchasing acquisition after acquisition of content and properties, and the scale can become massive. So making sure how can I use data to prioritize what I should be looking at, how I can use that to make decisions. So how do we leverage data to make smarter decisions about how we monitor our total catalog, and what trends can be leveraged to make sure that we're managing our portfolio in the way.
And it's finding, we hear a lot about the long tail, or your catalogue of content. It has residual value. It's often very popular content, and then you look at certain titles will have a renaissance, will have a sort of renewed fan base, because maybe some of the primary characters have seen a resurgence, or the actors have seen a resurgence. Maybe the story resonates with a current world event, or some other factor that brings the popularity back again. Or it may well be, hey, this title that hasn't been on general release for a while is heavily pirated in this particular region. Why is that? Is that an opportunity to put a second, third, fourth window release out? I think also from the live perspective, looking at where fans are trying to engage with an event.
That's a great one to bring up.
Whether it's a sporting event or some other kind of event, where they're trying to engage, but they can't because there isn't a legitimate platform for them to consume that event. Again, that can be used in very similar ways to structure access in a different way.
Right. And then thirdly, and this one I think is unique, so we discussed, as far as, our anti-piracy solutions, we cover all of these channels, but then as a business, we have, we look at IP issues ranging, from anti-piracy, of course, through other types of intellectual property infringement. So, anything from counterfeit to partner compliance and more. So if you are one of these, massive enterprise international type companies, and you've made something popular, it's going to be no surprise that you probably have IP issues across a number, of different ranges. So, for this particular customer, we took a look, how can we take this data that we have across all of these instances, especially piracy, to help them make, business development strategies across the enterprise. So if we need to be in this particular space for distribution, does that also impact, merchandise sales? Does it also impact, other pieces of intellectual property that we want to follow up?
Absolutely, it does. And I think also when you look at typically how you gather evidence about an infringement, you're actually doing it in 2 stages usually. You're looking at you're collecting evidence, and that's collecting metadata about the infringement. Where is it? What describes it? What's the various metadata descriptions, and so on. You then make a decision based on the rules of engagement. Is it the right target? Is it what we're looking for? And then potentially you'd be downloading that content to sample it, to verify that it's valid. And as part of that initial collection of metadata,
Oh, I'm not sure what's happened to the audio there. Zach and Robin, are you able to unmute yourselves, or? Call in again. Sorry about this, everybody. We're just having a couple of technical issues. We'll just wait for Robin and Zach to come back.
That have different purpose. Twitch, for example. Sorry about that, guys. I don't quite know what went on there. We'll try it again. Hopefully that was okay.
Finally, to wrap up before the Q&A section, we've mentioned a number of times throughout this particular webinar that we GDPI, we sit on billions of through of collection, and that allows us to instance of the piracy landscape, you would normally that we put together and share. Some of them, most certainly drive those decisions. So one of the first ones that we do, with the regional and then when we started to dig into the data, was the biggest infringer of this particular content. So dig into their young and enforcement practices.
Robin, I don't know if you can hear me, but the audio seems to be breaking up again. I think we're just going to wait for Robin and Zach to be able to connect again, just to be able to give the last couple of slides that they have. Apologies for this, everybody.
Some of the right things in the right way, and then we dug into the data to analyze it. So here's a chart that shows from our GDPI system. You can see there on the left the total unique infringements by country. You have India, kind of much further ahead than Brazil, United States, in Korea. So when we were able to filter this down by country, that certainly jumped out that you're looking at 3.8 versus the next closest, which is 700, so on and so forth. The next thing that we want to do is kind of really try to drill in and figure out which city is is this piracy coming from, and is there any kind of context clues, or is there anything additional that we can references that we can draw from that? And so what we found is this particular city in India has pirated most overall across the world that we were able to look at, and we dug into it. Kind of why this city. Why, this particular instance, what could be done in this area, to maybe help curb any unique traits that they have. So what we found is second largest export of information technology. So lots of access, lots of, technology, kind of savvy people and industries in this area, kind of ripe for being able to do something of this nature. And then we wanted to look, if, India is a country, if they are, kind of newer or immature in their enforcement, then we should check, what is the role of the ISP then play in this particular instance of piracy, and what can we do about it? So ISP education, and then we found ISP expense, can drive piracy. So in this particular instance, we're able to drill down to the actual ISP level that had the most unique infringements, and then from there, we were able to look and see, kind of how the economic impact of, the billing practices, so on and so forth, for that ISP might have impacted the piracy trends and have that negative effect.
Yeah, particularly if that particular ISP is offering more expensive plans, that also suggests the demographic of customers who have a more disposable income, so who may well actually be tuned more to consuming or buying legitimate versions of content if they could get access to it in their preferred method. Right.
So, yeah, conclusion, obviously, the data helps inform and drive the release strategy. Being able to narrow down to the city and the ISP, you can take that information back to the business, whether you need to do some relationship building and educational outreach to those ISPs in hopes to, have them, become an advocate for your content protection. Is certainly something, that is there, and then to the city level. So are there things that you can do as a company to target these individual cities if you have access to the information to help, kind of curb or drive, a certain group into that, those authorized channels. So this is another one that we took a look at. Can you use data to predict the Academy Awards? And could you potentially use it to place a bet? We don't encourage gambling, but we did take a look at the data through that particular lens. So, does being nominated impact your popularity with pirates? Does winning increase it? Which countries, outside of potentially the United States and others, are most interested in the Oscar nominations and how does that drive piracy in these countries, and then overall, what did it, based on what we found, could you predict an Oscar winner? So what you see here is 2 weeks before the awards, it's going along, and then finally that big yellow arch that you see skyrocket is actually The Shape of Water, which is the one that won. So in this particular instance, somebody knew, or I guess the group of pirates, maybe had keyed in on that was the best film of the year based on the opinion of the Academy Awards. It jumps, as much, and that ended up being the winner. 2 weeks after, you see the piracy levels. They do tend to return after the buzz of the award show lessens, but the overall levels of piracy for those films that were nominated for Best Picture were higher than they were previous. So it certainly had a lasting impact on the piracy that you see. And then that top band, that top line that you see there was The Shape of Water. So it continued to be more popular with the pirates based on the Academy Award.
This sort of idea, that's a bit of fun, but what it actually does is it gives you, again, additional signals to validate your marketing strategy, for example, or whatever campaign management you might be doing, promotion around a particular event, to be able to get an independent sort of assessment of that.
Yep, you're absolutely right. So just kind of quickly going through some of this data, can pirates predict a winner? So you can look at the instances of change in the amount of piracy for Shape of Water jumped all the way up 139%. So if you were tracking this and you wanted to, maybe try to determine or pick your favorite horse, so to speak, the increase of Shape of Water would have certainly led you in the right direction. And then piracy trends. So again, you have, this is for The Shape of Water specifically. You've got January closer, and then right around the award season, it jumps up and then it stays in. Then we wanted to take a look, what other countries use or do the Academy Awards can potentially impact the popularity of piracy in these countries. So again, if you take a look, you've got Russia, India, Brazil, the United States, some common names up there. And again, you can see the various colors where it jumps, the percent change during the Academy Awards for those particular films, skyrocket. So if you're thinking about, as Robin just mentioned, you're kind of using that data to influence your global strategy. Don't forget that the Academy Awards, and Robin, I'm sure you guys have your own popular award show that this would the BAFTAs, yeah, they would transfer the other direction. So keeping an eye on the global impact of something regional that might shift the popularity in your particular property is key. So what did we prove? Being nominated, if you're nominated for an Academy Award, especially Best Picture, unsurprisingly, people want to pirate it and take a look at that. However, winning, it does bring the popularity, but it also continues the staying power of that increased piracy. So you want to make sure that your program is adapted for that. The Academy Awards, certainly, while it's focused in Hollywood and the U.S., it impacts the globe. And then it didn't 100% confirm the predicted winner, but the jump in the staying power in piracy in this particular case was spot on with the overall winner. So take that information as you will.
Absolutely. I think just remember, the Oscars were on the 5th of March, and as we showed 2 weeks before, on the 27th, we saw that Shape of Water spike.
Yeah,
right
like a rocket ship, right? Just
so
right up.
That is, before you are predicting before the event. Yeah. And
then finally, we do want to leave some time for some Q&A. We've got just a quick instance of a look into the future, for more research opportunities. So we've got some great tools that help us again turn that data into BI and actionable intelligence. But as we've also showed, the landscape of piracy is forever changing, and it does it at the speed of light. So this is kind of a new instance or something to take a look at.
For sure. I mean, this is a really good example of how we kind of bring all of this rich data together to begin to derive insight in new areas. And this in particular is the audience measurement of live streams. One of the most traditionally difficult things to do, but actually by bringing together different data points, both our own and third parties, but also looking at sort of viewing statistics we talked about, maybe anonymized ISP data, looking at the packages, the hosting packages a lot of these pirate operators are using, to try and build together a verifiable scoring value for a particular given piece of content.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a really good opportunity here to collaborate, not only with our clients, but also people within the wider industry as well.
Yeah, especially as you talked about P2P is certainly a significant area of piracy with the trend to the live streaming being able to have those same kind of metrics and KPIs for that part of the industry is becoming more and more important as that trend takes hold.
Sure.
So to wrap here, and then we'll move into the Q&A. As far as the industry trends go, certainly they're growing their own brands. They are using and leveraging legitimate business operational tools and practices to become more and more popular and to really align themselves more and more with someone who in the past would not have thought to maybe pirate something, but the way that they position and market and the technology they use is kind of becoming more and more aligned. The IPTV looking more and more legitimate, and then everyone is a new face of piracy. From a technology and data lens, really, your piracy program needs innovative technology. You've got all of these different channels. All those channels are evolving, and then the channels themselves are forever growing. So, an innovative technology partner is certainly, a cornerstone of having a successful program. And then, the data and the access to data is key. So, in piracy, we generate mountains and mountains and mountains of data. So you've got to be able to get through it accurately, and then have some tools like a dashboard such as Insight to be able to take a look and digest, and then move forward with some action. And then go ahead, Ron. Got you off there.
I just sort of say, and not be afraid to experiment.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
What we've talked about today are some examples, but these are not, these are the only things that
we didn't find the end or the box of things you can do with them.
They're example. I mean, I guess that's the beauty of it. I think it's particularly exciting elements around, don't be afraid to experiment. And if you think about, a question you'd like an answer to, it's those what-if questions that might take you on an interesting journey by looking at sort of this sort of information, this sort of data, maybe with your own data that you have in your enterprise, and coming up with some conclusions, and then working back and seeing that they're valid and they work out. And that's that can be a really valuable exercise.
And then finally, the industry impact. Having access to that data, you can use industry information to make those valuable business decisions. You can use it to keep a global perspective on your program, and then the insight can really help tweak those internal programs to make sure that with the resources that you have, you're doing the best that you can. So with that, we'll turn it over for a few minutes of Q&A. I think there are some questions.
Thank you, Robin and Zach. That's a really great presentation. I'm sorry to say that we've actually run out of time for Q&As because we're almost at the top of the hour. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining our webinar, Powering Your Anti-Piracy Strategy with Business Intelligence and Analytics. Please take a few minutes to complete our brief survey, which will automatically appear as you exit the webinar, and have a great day. Thanks, everyone, for your time.